Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. What's the creepiest unsolved mystery? A creepy one off the top of my head is the harassment of Bill and Dorothy Wacker, an elderly couple from Ohio. Their house had been ransacked a couple of times between 1984 and 1985. Then, in July of 1985, a stranger knocked on their door whilst Dorothy was home alone recovering from heart surgery, asking to use their phone due to his car apparently breaking down. She thought he left after making the call, but then was knocked unconscious by a blow to the head. Dorothy woke up bound and gagged on the kitchen floor, but thankfully managed to crawl to an open window to get help from her neighbors, who called the police. Bill then returned home to find his revolver, among a few other things, had been stolen. This was accompanied by the message "cheaper, but will do" scrawled in crayon on one of their walls. 4 months later, the revolver turned up on their porch in a bag. The harasser repeatedly phoned the couple, sometimes threatening them and sometimes just breathing deeply down the phone like a ducking creep. Despite changing their phone number multiple times, they were unable to stop the calls. After this, they installed security lights. The harasser responded with a note saying, "Your LIGHTZRALF." They were frequently left out of mocking and scary notes. The Wackers staked out their own house after this in an attempt to find the person who had been harassing them. However, they didn't find anything. After the stakeout had been called off, they heard banging at the side of their house and found a note simply saying, "Get the message." After this, as far as I can recall, the harassment abruptly stopped. It really freaks me out. What motive would one have to harass a random old couple? For years and years, they never got close to finding out who did it, and both Bill and Dorothy died without ever finding out who made their lives hell. Damn, that's some next level harassing. I can imagine some guy looking at his Google Calendar and it says, "Call a old couple you've been harassing," and breathe deeply into the receiver. "Sorry, boys, can't make it out bowling tonight. I have these crayons and a thing to do." My favorite is probably John Lang's case. Basically, a local activist posts regularly about the Fresno Police Department and about how they were plotting against him. People thought he was crazy until he set up a camera that recorded lots of weird shit, including a bunch of cops parking across the street from his house staring at him in the middle of the night, and a van pulling up with a large camera that people theorized took thermal pictures through walls to see if anyone was inside. He posted that weekend the police was going to murder him and accurately predicted his death. The police released a report saying that he was stabbed repeatedly in the back and then recanted, saying it was supposedly a suicide of a crazy man. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after you. This is like that spy found stabbed to death in a zipped up bag and locked on the outside, and it was ruled a suicide. I think it was in London. Can't remember exactly. This makes me think of a Wild West folk tale about every guy shot by a famous gunslinger being ruled a suicide, as you only stood up to this guy if you wanted to die. Antoinette Ditto's kidnapping. She let her kidnapper in after he said that he was Uncle Joe, where they threw her into a van. The creepy part is a year later, someone called 911 claiming to be her, and someone shouts in the background who said you could use the phone, and a struggle is heard before the call cuts off. Antoinette's mom said that she was sure it was her daughter's voice. Then 4 years later, a girl matching Antoinette's description was acting strange in a diner, and left a note on a napkin that said, "Please help, call police. She's still missing," and she went missing in 1986. There's a strong belief amongst the locals' true crime fans that the mother set her daughter up to be taken. The mom, who was dirt poor raising 3 kids, somehow had enough money to buy a sports car after her daughter disappeared. Police believe the mom was heavily into drugs. The whole story of Uncle Joe taking her after she opened the front door at 3 a.m. while mom was passed out drunk comes from her little sister, who was 4 at the time of the kidnapping. Only, the sister didn't tell cops that story until 5-ish years later. When you combine that plus all the inconsistencies of the mother's story, it seems likely the mom helped her very young daughter develop a false memory of what actually happened. Edit. Grammar. I believe that is what happened. Her story was posted on r/unresolved mysteries, and it seems the most plausible. She did have an Uncle Joe as well, and the mom probably owed some dealer some $, and sold her kid off to pay off the debts. The mom died from alcoholism as well, so we will never know what happened to her kid. What would the kid buyer do to the kid? What was it all for? Some trafficking ring? It gets even wider. The initial report said the fire burned the kids' corpses entirely, but a person who worked on a crematorium said that, during a cremation, they burned the bones for 2 hours after, to fully cremate them, and the fire's temperature and the time the fire occurred weren't enough for it to happen. The salesman who visited the Sodders' house 2 months before the fire was also part of the coroner's jury that stated about the fire completely burning the kids' corpses, and one of the firemen later retracted himself, saying he found the heart of one of the kids, that later was proved to be actually a ox liver. Oh god. This is like some next level mafia bullshit. For real, my guess is they kidnapped the kids, and then burned the house as a cover. Why they took the kids I'll never know. He must have done a lot more than just bad-mouthed a mob boss. A Chinese girl was found in thousands of pieces in multiple bags on the street in 1996. The killer is still not found. Reddit.com link. My god, this is horrific. Don't Google it if you have a weak heart. If you have a weak heart. So all of Reddit. And older thread with the NSFW photo album. Reddit.com link. Edit. Highlighted the word NSFW. The Satake family murders. The killer stayed in their house for a while after the murders as if nothing had happened. He allegedly made himself some tea, took a nap, used their computer for a bit and helped himself to some of their ice cream. I feel like someone who is that comfortable being in a house with people he just murdered has done it before and will probably continue as long as they are not caught. The house still stands. It's got a tarp over it now. But the crazy thing is that there is a kids playground right next to it in a neighborhood where all the houses are torn down, except the one. Interesting. My sister-in-law lives next to Satake Park and I always wondered how close she was to the house where this all happened. Do you have the coordinates? There are so many episodes of Forensic Files where a murderer has some packaged food in the house and they find the wrapper in his car. Andrew Gosselin. Smart boy who had a perfect attendance record skips school to go to a train station to buy a one-way ticket to King's Cross in London on his own. As soon as he leaves the station, he seemingly vanishes in an area crawling with CCTV cameras. None of the CCTV cameras in the entirety of London had saved footage of him as the police waited 2 weeks before asking local businesses if there was any footage of him saved. And there's no evidence of him ever leaving the city. There's theories he was groomed or got snatched off the street, but that's pretty much impossible to do in such a busy area. He had a PSP on him when he disappeared, but Sony confirmed no PSN account had ever been made on his account. He had no access to the internet at home and didn't even have a mobile phone. Strangely, he left the charger for the PSP at home, suggesting he possibly intended to come back. None of the CCTV cameras in the entirety of London get footage of him, and there's no evidence of him ever leaving the city. Actually, it's worse. The police waited more than 2 weeks before trying to see if any of the local businesses' CCTV had picked him up. Unfortunately, most places don't keep more than 2 weeks worth of footage. Thanks, I've amended it. That's pretty shoddy police work there. I got obsessed with his case. Probably because I have a quiet teen boy just like him myself. Here's the thing though, in raising said teen boy, I've realized that there's so many little things they do that defy logic or common sense. For example, he was walking with a group of mates to school and one of them had brought a football. They were walking it along, kicking it gently between them when predictably it rolled out into the road just past the gutter. My son stepped out, bent down and picked it up without even looking, and a car slammed on and swerved, just missing his head. The driver was my friend, who obviously told me, but the most worrying thing, despite us his entire life drilling him on road safety and him always being totally predictable and sensible, we thought, when an out of routine situation was presented to him, the ball rolling into the road, at the most crucial moment he did not do what I honestly thought would be instinctive for him. I wonder if something very slightly out of the ordinary happened to Andrew, like so slightly that his instincts didn't kick in time. He had his PSP. Maybe he went to one of the many unlicensed game shops to buy a game, or have it unlocked, and the owner invited him to step into the back to see how it was all done, or something like that, and he accepted. His instincts just not kicking in time. Maybe the shop had patrons in, so he felt safe. Delphi Bridge Murders. 2 preteen girls were murdered near abandoned train bridge in Indiana, 2017. One girl got audio and video of the suspect walking toward them 2 years later and is still taking tips from the public. It's surprising there hasn't been progress. It makes me think it was just a drifter passing through. The little knowledge I have of the case, it seems they have a suspect but don't have enough evidence to charge at this stage. The police seem to be keeping a lot out of the media, which is good. I reckon they'll solve it at some stage. They released a second sketch of the suspect and told everyone out here to ignore the first. Years later. Zeb Quinn. The guy goes missing. His car is found with a live puppy inside, headlights still on, and a pair of lips drawn on the back window with lipstick. His wiki page shows that a possible suspect was found. The co-worker he was with the night he went missing was later arrested for the murder of a celebrity chef and her husband. After his conviction, authorities found more evidence that have allowed them to also charge him with the murder of Zeb, but what that evidence is hasn't been said. He wrote a rap song detailing how he did it and why his alibi was a lie, which made it to number 43 in the charts. Key and Peele? The Beaumont children deserves a mention. 3 kids in Adelaide, South Australia who went down to the beach in 1966 and never came back. They were seen talking to a man and then walking around the suburb, but that's it. Never came home. Never found. Nobody ever arrested. Police still following tips and digging for bodies more than 50 years later. Kids were like 9, 7 and 4. All 3 just vanished. Parents refused to move from the house for a very long time, in case they ever came home. Does my head in? Parents refused to move from the house for a very long time, in case they ever came home. Oh god, that is heartbreaking. Sounds kind of like the beginning of a series of unfortunate events. The body in boiler stack 9. Basically, some maintenance workers found a well-cooked body in the stack of a boiler in the steam plant at a paper mill. Nobody knows who it was, but there are signs that he died very slowly. He was found with his clothes off and wrapped around his feet and hands as if to protect himself from the searing hot metal. The theory is that he was exploring during the weekend when the boiler was off, got stuck, and was unable to alert anyone before they started the boilers back up the following week. The body had been in there for months by the time he was found. I read about this just last month, and the thought of how long and slow your death would be as your skin slowly starts to peel, and knowing there's no way out and your screams for help go unheard, terrifies me. Couple of deep breaths to scream for help. Now you've got seared lunges and can't scream anymore. Join our community Discord, link in description. A few years ago, 2 Dutch girls went traveling to North Central America, Panama, and they went missing. The phone records were weird. They called 911 multiple times throughout the next few nights. Their camera was found with dozens of random photos taken in the middle of the night, as if they were trying to see using the flash. Then I think they found some body parts. A boot with a foot still inside and a pelvis bone or something. Really creepy. Wikipedia.org link. Edit. Panama. Not Belize. Edit 2. Okay, I'm sorry, Panama is in North Central America. I read up on this one a lot when it happened. I believe the consensus is that they got lost on a trail and tried crossing a rope bridge in the dark. One of the girls slipped and fell and was badly injured or killed. The other took photos of where she had fallen and made a kind of map and also took photos of that. She tried to go for help but also must have fallen or died from starvation. Animals and rain are likely to blame for the body parts being as scattered as they were. It's a very sad tale and a hugely cautionary one. If you're going hiking and you don't know anything about the area, be very prepared and very careful. And make sure people know exactly where you go and when. Sadly, this one was simply a poorly planned hike onto the wrong trails in the rainy season, in an area that becomes steep and impassably muddy that time of year. It's frustrating and tragic that the girls survived for so long while waiting for help. The Bodom Lake Murders. In 1960 in Finland, a group of 4 teenagers went camping near of Lake Bodom. 2 girls both age 15 and 2 guys both age 18. At night 3 of them were killed and the only one of the boys survived. Their bodies and the horribly injured boy were found a few hours before noon. The badly injured boy was laying on top of the bloody tent. If you search for pictures of the tent, you can see that it's completely drenched in blood. The boy was not fully conscious and had several fractures in his skull. He survived and is still alive today with no memory of what happened. The police tried everything to find out what happened. Later in 2005, the survivor was accused of being the murderer. I however do not believe this to be true. Some of the teen's possessions were taken, wallets, shoes etc. Some were later found in the forest 500 meters away. With the injuries he had, walking that distance would have been impossible. Also, why come back to the crime scene? There was also no way this boy could have caused himself injuries to the back of the head. Also, sometimes like the leather jacket from the boy that died still haven't been found. To search for the murderer, the largest manhunt in Finland's history was conducted. 88 searched criminals were found in the forests of Espoo as a result, but not the murderer. There were multiple sightings of a light-haired man walking nearby the crime scene before and after the crime. He was never found. I don't know what is more creepy, the murders themselves or the fact that they found 88 criminals in the forests. And 88 criminals in a forest is a lot, right? Not for Finland apparently. I've posted about this before elsewhere, but the Villisca Ax Murders has got to be up there for me. Sometime around midnight between Sunday, the 9th of June, and Monday, the 10th of June, 1912, a person bludgeoned to death 8 people sleeping, including 2 adults and 6 children aged 5 through 12. The Man from the Train by Bill James and Rachel McCarthy James is about this case. It's a phenomenal work of historical research. Highly recommend. The Max Headroom broadcasts. Probably the most harmless of any post here, because it was just a bloke in a mask chatting shit after hijacking Doctor Who. But if I was watching TV late at night and that thing happened, I wouldn't sleep for weeks. Here's a classic I am a post from a guy who claims he knows the people who did it. The first sentence of the post. Please read. After 4 years, I'm happy to say that the 2 individuals mentioned in the article, J and K, have been formally excluded as suspects. Okay, so maybe creepy to me at least. When I was 5, my dad didn't come to pick me up at the weekend as usual. My parents had been divorced for a few years but were on relatively good terms and co-parenting by all accounts. The next day my mom took me round because I was upset and she was pissed off. No answer at the door, but his car and work van were on the drive. She still had a key to the house, so let us in to find everything in place. His wallet and keys on the kitchen table. Dog in his bed. She fed the dog and went back home. After a couple of days still no contact, so she went back round. Everything was just as she found it last time. All belongings and clothes there. His bags and suitcase still in the cupboard. Just a hungry dog. She took the dog back with her and spoke to his side of the family. No one had heard from him for about a week, but nothing out of the ordinary. A mutual friend at his work said he hadn't been in for a week either and their boss was furious. She called the police and reported him missing. They found no clues. His wallet, keys and cars all at the house. His passport was in the drawer. His petty cash stash of about £500 was where it was always kept. No signs of struggle. No signs of his bank accounts hadn't been touched for a week, and no out of the ordinary or large transactions or withdrawals over the previous months. Long story short, they found nothing and eventually shelved the case, and 23 years later still no contact with any friends or family. His parents and brother have all since passed away, never knowing what happened. I'm really sorry. I hope someday you'll find out what happened. Is he listed on NAMUS? You should contact the police case manager and offer to submit your DNA for comparison. It will be compared to all previous and future unidentified persons. The Monster with 21 Faces. An extortion case from Japan that had deadly consequences for the parties involved. If you like Ghost in the Shell, then this is the case for you. For some reason this always reminds me of Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes. Didn't they keep finding pairs of hands and feet around Hollywood Hills a few years back? I never heard an update on that case. I know there's still shoes left with feet in them, washed on a shore in Canada. Really creepy since it already happened over 15 times. It's almost certain that it's the remains of people's bodies jumping to their deaths on a bridge nearby. Still creepy though. Japan keeps having boats full of corpses wash ashore in a similar manner, assumed to be North Koreans attempting to illegally fish, getting lost and dying of starvation exposure. That was Carl building his dragon. In the 90s in Northern California we had some cows get completely mutilated with laser-like cuts and their sex organs were cut out. Completely unsolved. Everyone says it was aliens. Edit. Here's a couple of more recent articles on the topic from my area. Creepiest.com link. Field investigator Gene Belodokes discovered an unusual substance on the bull's chest and testicles that was black and hard. Biophysicist Lovegood confirmed the substance was pure bovine hemoglobin that could only be produced by complex laboratories centrifuge processes. Google.com link. Her left cheek was removed and it was a clean jawbone with no flesh or blood on bone. The tongue was completely gone. The rectum and vulva was gone in a large oval. Rents.com link. Actually I think this was mostly media hysteria. The way the animals were found weren't particularly unusual. Maggots tend to eat away at flesh very neatly. Don't really have a source but I have a vague memory of watching a documentary ages ago. I remember something like this as well. Someone decided to just leave a dead cow and see what happened. No chupacabra, just regular old nature. I have a local one that's not very well known. In my country there are some caves in the jungle that are called La Cueva de los Tears. It's a network of caves and there are many mysteries surrounding the caves. One of the theories claims there is a whole underground city under the Andes. Another one claims that there is a hidden library with texts carved in metal that narrate the beginning of humanity. Even Neil Armstrong, the North American astronaut, went inside to explore in 1976. Information is very sparse and in Spanish, but it's very interesting. As a result of the claims published in von Dorniken's book, an investigation of Cueva de los Tears was organized by Stan Hall of the United Kingdom. In 1976, one of the largest and most expensive cave explorations ever undertaken. The expedition involved over 100 people, including experts in a variety of fields, British and Ecuadorian military personnel, a film crew, and former astronaut Neil Armstrong. 1. The team also included 8 experienced British cavers who thoroughly explored the cave and conducted an accurate survey to produce a detailed map of it. There was no evidence of von Dorniken's more exotic claims, although some physical features of the cave did approximate his descriptions and some items of zoological, botanical, and archaeological interest were found. The lead researcher met with Morix's indigenous source, who claimed that they had investigated the wrong cave, and that the real cave was secret, too. And apparently these mysteries were claimed by von Dorniken, the same guy who wrote the infamous Chariots of the Gods, a book which is the main reason why cable TV has so many pyramids were built by aliens first people pseudo-documentaries. I think this one is arguably solved. A fraudulent book written by someone previously convicted for embezzlement and fraud, though to be fair a different kind of fraud. Hell, the guy later admitted that he made the whole thing up. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.